If you want to be more explosive, more agile, faster, more powerful, then you need to train your feet as well as your legs. I've already discussed in the past how using dorsiflexion can help you to jump higher. That means you're starting with your toes pointing upwards, and then that way having further to push your feet down into the ground, generating more momentum and more power when you drive the balls of the feet into the ground to push yourself up. But even without this added step, you're always using the toe flexors when you push off the ground. Training things like calf jumps will naturally be using our toe flexor muscles a little bit. One example is the Flexor digitorum longus. This is a deep muscle of the leg that goes from the calf, specifically the tibialis posterior, found near the soleus, and attaches to the 4 small toes. These are pretty important for things like supporting the arch of the foot, which we've previously discussed is crucial for engaging the glutes, to make yourself more glute dominant and more powerful. Remember, the glutes are the #1 anti-gravity muscles in your body. The other important toe flexor muscle is the flexor hallucis longus. This is the muscle that connects to the big toe and is one of the driving forces when it comes to pushing off the floor. The way we can think of these flexor muscles is as a kind of bridge between the powerful muscles of the leg and the ground. In other words, you can have the most powerful glutes and hamstrings and quads and calves in the world, but if you have weak feet, then you can't translate that power into the ground to be as explosive as possible. Improving mobility here is also very important because if your ankles are stiff, then you can't move your feet as freely to push yourself. So it's really important that you learn to use all these muscles in order to drive yourself forwards and into the air, as well as to maintain proper stance and form. Studies show that toe flexor muscles do respond to training and that this can significantly increase jump height, distance and directional change. Our feet, toes and ankles have other important roles in our performance too. Our toes can splay in order to prevent us twisting our ankle or tripping over when we land on uneven terrain. At the same time, ankle mobility allows us to push off the ground at different angles and still achieve a huge amount of force. So of course they play a big role when it comes to balance, and they provide us with proprioceptive feedback about the ground underneath us. We can even grip onto the ground using our toes in order to gain more traction and to push off more powerfully when running. So how do we make sure that we're training the toe flexors and the feet in general? Well, one tip is to make sure that the footwear you're using is able to properly support full range of motion. I like my Vivobarefoot Vibram knits, which I recently got. Another example is the Feiyues shoe, which I believe is worn by Edu Portal. These remove that big thick wedge of sole that normally sits between your foot and the ground, thereby allowing you to actually use your feet in a useful manner, to translate strength from specific toes into the ground, to feel the ground underneath you. You need to ease yourself into this. Don't get a pair of barefoot shoes right away and start sprinting, but gradually look for shoes with a thinner and thinner sole, less and less of a heel to toe drop, and a bigger toe box. That way you can build the strength gradually to avoid injury. Better yet, of course, is to train barefoot, and that way you can really engage your big toe in the movements, utilize the mind-muscle connection to make sure that it's involved as it should be when squatting and jumping. Again, you need to be very careful easing your way into barefoot running and the like, but you can slightly more safely slip your shoes off if you're training at home in your gym. I'd be remiss, of course, not to mention the Tarahumara tribe, who famously run huge distances daily, and part of the reason that we think they're able to do this is because they run in very minimal footwear or entirely barefoot. Finally, if you want to train the big toe specifically, or the smaller toes, then you can do so using a resistance band. Sit on the ground and wrap the band around the toe as though you're about to pull it into the dorsiflexion position. As you do that, gently push against the resistance with your big toe or the 4 smaller toes by flexing. This works really well to isolate those muscles, but I do find that most people are not going to have the time to dedicate to specific foot training like this on top of everything else, which is why I like this other option more. So ballet dancers are of course very well known for their impressive foot strength, and there are various different types of training they use to develop this, which will almost certainly be the basis for a future video. One of my favourites though is simply practicing pushing with the big toe into the floor and holding that as a static contraction. So you can do this anywhere. You could be sitting down, you could be waiting in a queue and just consciously push that big toe into the ground. And you can also practice alternating between the big toe and the 4 others whilst doing this, or even making fists with the toes. Finally, try simply going as high onto your toes as possible and then holding the position. That's something else you can do throughout the day as a form of incidental training. And of course, you should also think about the role of your toes when you're performing any other movement like a squat or a lunge. Just make sure you're really working that mind-muscle connection and thinking about even this extremity and what it's doing whilst you're moving through that motion. So if you want to see even better gains from your explosive legs workouts, then add these exercises to the end of routines or in and around the rest of your training. So that was just a quick tip. I hope you found that useful and interesting. Let me know if I've missed anything interesting about foot training. I'm sure I'll talk about the hyperarch in future, but any other topics I'd love to hear about. I really love it when you give me suggestions for future videos. I've had loads of great ideas. Some of my best videos have been suggested by you guys, and I really appreciate it. So yeah, got lots more like this on the way. Thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.